In the last video we did about clutter, the comment section was filled with stories and thoughts and reasons why people are struggling with clutter, and you are not alone if you are feeling the same way. Clutter is hard. I mean, it's hard enough to get the motivation to clean, but to declutter, that is challenging. So in this video, I want to share with you some of the most poignant comments that we got in the last video, and I want to talk through some strategies just to really give some extra help. And I'll also share some personal stories because I clutter with struggle too. Okay? Before we get cracking on the video, I just wanted to tell you that I've recently put together a 90-day decluttering course, which sounds like a lot of days, but really you're just dealing with one very tiny thing every single day. So it's super bite-sized and it's super manageable. I put this course together for people like me who don't want to do a lot of work at one time and really struggle with getting motivated. So if you want to learn more and check out the course, I've got a link for you down below. Judy Markle 0829 says, I am decluttering, but 30 years is a lot of stuff. No one's denying that. That sounds overwhelming. I'm gonna validate that for you. But here's the thing. You have to find a starting point, whether it's giving yourself 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour a day, or giving yourself a deadline like by July 1st, 2024, this is gonna be done. Whatever it is, you need a target and you need to start working toward that. You have to put one foot in front of the other, because if you never start, it's never gonna happen. But if you can make small, incremental changes every single day, that's when things start to happen. So don't think about the project as a whole, but break it down into really small, easily approachable chunks, and that's gonna get you to your goal. Home-Hints had a great comment with lots of good information and shared a couple of things to consider. Ever tried the 20-20 rule? If you can replace it in 20 minutes for less than 20 bucks, you probably don't need to keep it. And I think these rules, while they don't apply for everything, we can apply the 80-20 rule to this 20-20 rule. 80% of the time, this rule is gonna work. 20% of the time, you'll have to kind of leave it to the side. But I like this because it says if something is like disposable and pretty easy to come across, you probably don't need to hang on to it. I also really like the idea of the digital clutter and setting up email filters that automatically sort your inbox. Now, these annoy me because you have to spend time learning the rules, setting up the filters, testing them. But I can say from personal experience, because I have these filters too, once they are set up, my friend, you are on easy street when it comes to emails, because all of a sudden you don't have 200 emails sitting there. They have all been pre-filtered for you and you can check them as you need them. Household Dog says, I sell used CDs. The minimalist movement really helped with both getting stock and getting more sales. Now, first of all, I'm curious, who is buying used CDs? Second of all, I think Chad should get in touch with you because he's got a ton of used CDs. But in all seriousness, this is a great point, because the more people are decluttering, the more the market for secondhand stuff is picking up. So this just proves the point that when you're trying to get rid of something, there's a buyer out there looking for what it is you're trying to get rid of. And because we have access to the internet, it's so much easier to find a buyer, an interested buyer for that thing we want to get rid of. And I always say, you have to, you're the custodian of this item, and you have to find the next custodian for that item when you're done. If it's toast, if it's garbage, obviously you're not going to pass it on. But if there's still value, if that item still works and could still make someone else happy, it's your job to find that person and maybe squeeze a bit of money out of them too. I'm so sorry, I can't pronounce your name, but here it is. And the question is, how do I subscribe from unwanted emails? Digital clutter is a real thing, but there's a law. Anyone who sends out emails has to have an unsubscribe button available in every email down at the bottom. Now, if you can't find that, then you can mark that as spam and that company gets a red X against it. It is very important that at the bottom of those emails, you see a way to unsubscribe. Now, there are other tools that you can use to unsubscribe from unwanted emails. First, if you use a service like Gmail, they will have the ability for you to just do a one-click unsubscribe if you see that email. I actually love that feature. And you can also sign up for products like Unroll.me. That's just an online service that you can use to unenroll you from emails that you don't want. What I like to do is I kind of like to see the emails that come in. And even though sometimes I get annoyed with the amount of emails that I get, if it's a company that I regularly spend money with, I just kind of deal with the annoyance, because when the time comes that I actually want to buy something, I want the coupon code. Here's another unpronounceable name, but I really think this is an important point. With inflation roaring, throwing things out is not advisable. Storage and organization becomes more important. So I agree and I disagree with this. I do think that if you have something in your home that is not serving you anymore, you shouldn't keep it. You can find a way to make some money off of it, and that will help that inflation issue. But I do agree with the point that you don't want to throw something out unnecessarily, having that sort of conspicuous consumption mentality where you can just buy whatever you want, get rid of whatever you want. Like, we do have to be more mindful about our money these days because it's not worth as much as it used to be. Susan5661 says, the more I declutter, the less I want to buy. And this was the most liked comment. And Susan, I am with you on this. We are on the same level. I find that when it comes to household items, clothing, because I've gone through the painful experience of decluttering, the last thing I want to do is bring a piece of future clutter into my home. And I even, like when I'm buying clothes, I look at it and I'm like, is this good quality? How long is this going to last me? Is this really trendy? Or is this something that I can, keep around for a year or 2 or 3? And that really makes me think twice. I can't tell you how many times I've picked something up, looked at it, and then put it back down because I just knew it was a piece of future clutter. And I'd be really curious in the comments how you feel about this point, and if going through the act of decluttering has made you rethink your purchases. Head to Toe Theatrical says, how can I encourage others in the family to help declutter? Yeah, this is another one I would love your thoughts on in the comments if you've had good experiences or good techniques that you've used to help family members declutter as well. This one's challenging because people are different. People have different subjective ideas of how cluttered or uncluttered a space is, how clean or dirty a space is, and quite frankly, what they want their space to look like that they live in. So just because one person wants the house completely minimal and decluttered doesn't mean the other person in the house feels the same way. And you don't want to become manipulative and naggy and kind of get into those unhealthy cycles while you're trying to get someone to declutter. But is there a polite, pleasant, reasonable way that you can ask for this to happen? Well, I don't think it's unreasonable to say to someone, if you're going to have clutter, you got to keep it in this designated space and I'm not going to bother you. And then if and when you're ready, you can go in there and deal with it. Nick Orange 4881 says, can you do a declutter clean video about art supplies? So I have an amateur artist living with me, and there are a lot of art supplies in our house because Chad really loves doing art. And that goes back to an earlier point where there are certain things that I don't look at because it's not my business. The art supplies are his domain and he can deal with it as he chooses. But this is what I'll say about art supplies. It's a hobby and it's very easy to collect a lot of things for the hobby that you love. So what I would say is before you go out and shop, just have a look at what you've already got and ask yourself, do I really need this thing? Is this really going to improve my game? Or can I just deal with the paints that I currently have and use them up like a tube of toothpaste before I go and I buy that new color? I know how easy and exciting it is to get something for a hobby, but it's a waste of money. And it's like I always say to my daughter, you know, you have this toy that you loved 2 months ago and now you don't even want to look at it. It's the same with hobby items, right? You were really excited about that package of paintbrushes 2 months ago. So go use that. Find that spark of joy again. You don't have to go buy something new. Queen Bee 7819 says, thank you, you're so inspiring. My donation box bag lives in the car trunk. Anything needing to go out is deposited at the door, and the next time I go to the car, it goes to the trunk. The next time I go to the donation center, it goes out forever. And you know what? What a simple system, but it works. I just wish everybody would start doing this because it's such an easy thing that you did, and it just gives you the ability to say, I'm done with this, and then to know what to do as your next step. So that way you can constantly keep that flow of clutter moving out of your house and finding its highest and next best use. This comes from Fiona Applewright. This has to be one of the most creative comments I've ever seen. I keep my old phone when I get an upgrade for my distracting apps. I know those ones. For me, it's a small price to pay for having a way to focus my attention properly. I move all of my shopping apps, rebate and flyer apps, games, etc. I personally will add social media to that. All I have on my actual phone is just my banking app, to-do list, YouTube, and email. It makes the battery last longer, and it's harder to be distracted by other stuff every time you reply to a text. I love this. Digital clutter and digital distractions are so real. I think it's ridiculous to have two phones on the one hand, but on the other hand, I really see the value. So Fiona Applewright, I love this tip, thank you. This comes from Kathleen Boscheman 8146. Oh, you are so right about it taking forever to declutter. We just sold our home after 45 years and downsized to a townhouse. I mean, how many people can relate with this? I worked months on getting the home ready for sale, and even though I thought I got rid of everything we still have, I opened boxes in our new garage. It's taking forever. We're in our 70s and it's so overwhelming and tiring. We hadn't moved since our early 30s, so I had no idea what I was doing, was completely unorganized, and when the movers moved boxes to our rented townhouse, unfortunately, I was at the old house, my husband was here, and my nephew and brother also moved a few things and threw some things out. Some boxes that were to be donated ended up here, and some that were marked with the rooms they should go into ended up being thrown out. It was such a fiasco. I don't think I'll ever get done or organized in our new space. Oh, Kathleen, I feel your pain. Moving is so huge and overwhelming, and as if it's not enough to say goodbye to a space you've been living in and prepare for a move, like the decluttering that goes into it, it is utterly exhausting, like physically, but also emotionally. I know that when we moved, we did a huge declutter before we sold the house to get rid of, stuff. And then when we moved, like when we actually packed the boxes, we got rid of a bunch of stuff. And then we moved in and we were like, great, we're not gonna fill the house up with clutter. And of course, it started to happen again. So, that's how Chad and I have to keep ourselves in check to make sure that we're not just filling the house up with tons of clutter. But I totally understand the feeling of where should I begin? This feels so overwhelming. I don't know where to start. And again, this points back to the whole reason I put that course together, the 90 Days of Decluttering, because I understand, I know how viscerally people feel this challenge of where do I start? I'm so overwhelmed. I hate this. It's really difficult. So I feel you, and I'm sorry that that happened to you. And I hope that as you unpack and settle into your new home, things start to make sense. This comes from Lisa Stevens 3822. Love your videos. Thanks, Lisa. I have benefited from putting things on my Amazon wish list and waiting to see if I really want them. I almost never buy anything on my wish list, but it does come in handy when someone wants to buy me a gift. Yeah, this is also a great suggestion. So what I love about this is it reduces the impulse buy. And you can just put things on a list, look at it, think about it, and then decide, do I really want this? Am I still thinking about this? Or was that sort of impulsive and it came and it went? I will tell you that this is something I do most notably with clothing, okay? Because it is so easy for me to look at something and see how someone else has styled it and be like, yeah, I'd wear that all day. But you know what? When I actually have done this in the past and I get a piece home, sometimes maybe it only makes sense to wear once. So I really put thought into clothing and shoes that I buy and say, yeah, am I really gonna get the wear out of this? Is it really worth that money? Or should I just leave it in my cart and let it disappear? Here's a tip from Pauline Avella 4362. For unwanted mail, I stuck a no junk mail sticker to my mailbox and I stop the junk mail before it reaches my home. Additionally, it helps the environment. Love this. So I'm in Canada, and for all of you Canadians, you can go to your local Canada Post Office and request that they put a no junk mail notification on your mailbox. You will no longer receive junk mail. I've had one for years. Love it, love just going to the mailbox and getting what's actually meant for me. And if you're in the States, you can also speak to your USPS office and request the same thing. They might have a different protocol, but I know that that exists. And I'm quite confident that in other countries around the world, there is a similar protocol with your mail carrier. And as effective as some businesses feel junk mail is, I gotta tell you, I find it really pesky. And I agree with Pauline, it is not good for the environment because that stuff just goes right into recycling. You know what? I can surmise from reading these comments, talking to friends and family, and also just through my own lived experience, that dealing with clutter is a universal struggle. We all find it hard. And I'd love to know in the comments down below, what is the one thing that you find the absolute hardest to get rid of? I also want to remind you that I did come up with that 90 days of decluttering course. I've got a link for you down below. I know that 90 days sounds like a lot, but instead of saying, oh my God, I have to declutter my whole house, I broke it down into the tiniest chunks over a 90-day period so that your house can actually go from chaos and clutter to a sense of calm. So you can check that out. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.